This year, the National is a little bit different for us. In past years, it was easier to think about it like a card show trip. Walk the floor, dig through some boxes, find some deals, pick up a few things for inventory, and maybe grab something cool for the collection. Maybe chase a promo or two. But this year, the whole team is going, and that changes everything. When one person goes to the National, you can wander and call it scouting. When 4 people go, wandering can turn into wasted time really fast. 4 people can cover more ground, find more opportunities, chase more promos, and source more inventory. But 4 people can also duplicate effort, get distracted, and come home with a pile of cards that look good in the room but never actually became listings. So this week, we're talking about the plan. Not the hype, not the checklist of booths, not the I hope we find something cool version, the actual plan. Because for us, the National is the primary inventory event of the year. If we do it right, we should come home with cards that can feed eBay listings, whatnot static listings, live sales, curated lots, and future show inventory. The goal is simple. Come home with at least a few 5,000 count monster boxes of cards that actually fit the business. Not just cards we like, cards we can sell. Welcome to my so-called card life, the podcast where we talk about what actually happens when you try to run a real card business, the decisions, adjustments, and lessons that don't show up in highlight reels. This episode is about preparing for the National as a reseller, not just as a collector. And there's a big difference there. As a collector, the National is overwhelming in a fun way. Every table has something interesting. Every showcase has something you probably have not seen in person before. And every dealer has a story. And every box might have a hidden card. But as a reseller, that same environment can work against you. Because everything at the National can feel like an opportunity. A dollar box feels like an opportunity. A bulk deal feels like an opportunity. A stack of non-sport cards feels like an opportunity. A random, rare, oddball item, that feels like an opportunity. A promo line feels like an opportunity. A dealer saying, I can do better if you take the whole box, definitely feels like an opportunity. But opportunity is not the same thing as inventory. That is the key distinction for this episode. Inventory has to have a path. It has to have a path to eBay or whatnot, or a live sale, or a curated lot, or a card show box, or a future buyer group. If I can't see this path, then I'm not buying inventory. I'm buying work. This is especially important for us because our business model is built around listing volume, scannable inventory, low to mid-end singles, curated lots, and selective higher margin pieces. We're not going to the National just to buy one showcase card and call it a trip. We're going because this is probably the single best sourcing opportunity of the year. This is also the largest non sport opportunity of the year for us. Star Wars, wrestling, pop culture, oddball, chrome, parallels, promos, vintage, weird stuff that doesn't show up at every local show. But even there, we've learned that non sport is not automatically good inventory. For Star Wars and professional wrestling, especially, the filter needs to be a little tighter. It either needs to be vintage or modern chrome, parallels, something unique or clearly tied to a true hobby name. And even with vintage, condition decides the lane. A lower grade 1977 Star Wars card may still sell, but maybe it's a $2.50 velocity card. Maybe it belongs in a set builder lot. Maybe it's a live sale inventory. Not every vintage card belongs in the $5 and up static listing workflow. And that's what this episode is really about. How do we go to the National with 4 people and come home with inventory that actually fits the machine? If you enjoy this kind of hobby and reseller conversation, check out the Dollar Box live every other Wednesday night from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Central. We go live with JC3 Cards and Collectibles in the Dollar Box to talk cards, reselling, eBay, whatnot, live selling, inventory strategy, and whatever chaos the hobby gives us that week. It is part hobby talk, part reseller discussion, part live reaction to what is actually happening in the card market. You can catch the Dollar Box live every other Wednesday night from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Central Time. The first part of the plan is the team itself. We have 4 people going this year, and that should be an advantage for us, but only if we use the team correctly. The mistake would be all 4 people walking together all day, stopping at the same tables, looking through the same boxes, and waiting in the same lines while getting tired at the same time. That's not a team plan. That's just a group walk. At a show as big as the National, 4 people should let us multiply coverage. I think the team needs 4 basic roles. And the first role is the primary buyer. That person has the final call on larger buys, budget discipline, and whether a deal actually fits the business. That doesn't mean nobody else can buy anything. It means there needs to be a final filter when a buy gets bigger, riskier, or more complicated. The second role is comps and research. This person is checking solds, looking at realistic list prices, and helping avoid the trap of buying cards based on what they are listed for instead of what they actually sell for. That matters a lot in dollar boxes and bulk situations because a card can look like a $10 card until you check and realize the actual sold range is $2 to $4. The third role is the non-sport scout. This person is specifically watching for Star Wars, wrestling, pop culture, oddball entertainment, and anything that might not be front and center at a sports heavy show. The National is a sports card show first, but that is exactly why the non sport pockets can be interesting. Some dealers know exactly what they have. Some dealers don't care as much because it's not their main category. The fourth role is the promo and redemption runner. This person watches the manufacturer lines, wrapper redemptions, free promos, exclusive packs, and anything that requires timing. That is a separate job. You don't want all four people burning an hour in the same line unless the payoff is worth it. And those roles can rotate. They don't need to be permanent. But the point is that each part of the day should have structure. One person can be digging, one person can be comping, one person scouting a different row, and one person can be tracking promos. Then we regroup. That's how four people becomes an advantage. The other piece is communication. We need a team text thread. We need booth numbers. We need quick photos of interesting inventory. We need a way to say, this vendor has 5 boxes of wrestling chrome, or this table has 1977 Star Wars, but condition is rough. Or maybe this booth is worth coming back to at the end of the day. I would even use a simple booth rating system. A means return today, while B means return if time allows. C means interesting but not urgent, and X means skip next time. I know that sounds basic, but at the National, basic systems matter. After 4 hours, every row starts to blur together. You will not remember where one good box was unless you track it. The goal is not to overcomplicate the trip. The goal is to prevent the trip from becoming random. The second part of the plan is defining what we are actually buying. The number one target is scannable inventory. Now, that may not sound exciting, but it's probably the most important category for us. Scannable inventory is inventory that can go into our existing workflow without creating a bunch of extra friction. Standard size cards, clear card information, recognizable names, cards that photograph or scan well, cards that can be listed in batches, and cards that fit eBay, Card Dealer Pro, Collects, Whatnot Static, or live sale workflows. That matters because buying is only one step. The card is not really inventory until it can be processed. If I buy 2,000 cards that are cheap but hard to identify, hard to scan, hard to title, or hard to price, I didn't buy a deal. I bought a project. And we already have enough projects. So scannable inventory gets priority. The second target is true hobby names. In sports, that means the names that have consistent search demand. Jordan, Kobe, LeBron, Brady, Mahomes, Jeter, Griffey, Ohtani, Caitlin Clark, Messi, Ronaldo, Tiger, Serena, names like that. It doesn't mean we only buy the absolute biggest names. But it does mean we should be careful with boxes full of players who require too much explanation. At a certain price, sure, almost anything can work. But for the kind of inventory we want to bring home, I would rather buy 500 cards with an obvious search demand than 5,000 cards that require me to explain why someone should care. The third target is clear margin $5 and up inventory. This is important because our eBay floor has generally been built around $5 singles. So if we're buying cards for static eBay listings, that math has to work. A card that lists at $4.99 can't be a $3 buy. That's not enough room after fees, supplies, labor, and the reality that some cards will sit. For $5 type inventory, I want to be buying cheap, really cheap. Quarter to maybe 75 cents, depending on the card. For $8 inventory, maybe $1 or $2. For $10 inventory, maybe $2 or $3. For $15 inventory, maybe $3 to $5. And for $20 inventory, maybe $5 to $8. Now, these aren't perfect rules, but they keep the mindset right. And let's not forget that we do also run $1.99 inventory, and we started our business by building up that ground floor at $1.99. But that's our velocity sales channel. We want to build up more of our margin sales channel with $5 and up. Now remember, the buy price has to leave room for the actual business, not just the theoretical count. The fourth target is cards that can live in live selling or curated lots. That's different from static eBay inventory. Some cards are not worth individual listing time, but they are still useful. A stack of recognizable football stars, a group of wrestling legends, a run of Star Wars characters, maybe a themed stack of quarterbacks, or a Chicago sports bundle. How about a GOATS box? Maybe a chrome and refractor stack, or a low-end rookie box. Those can all be useful if the buy price is right. That's why the monster box goal matters. I want at least one monster box that is cleaner static marketplace inventory. And I want at least one monster box that's live sale, curated lot, and show inventory. 2 different lanes, 2 different standards, both useful. The non-sport piece deserves its own segment because I think it's one of the biggest opportunities and one of the easiest places to make some mistakes. We've learned this the hard way. For Star Wars and wrestling, it's not enough that the subject is recognizable. The format matters. The lane matters. For us, the best Star Wars and wrestling inventory usually falls into one of these categories: vintage, modern chrome, parallels, numbered cards, refractors, or autographs, relics, promo cards, and some of those oddball items are unique pieces. That is the filters. Now, I'm sure you're saying, well, doesn't that make sense for all cards? Yes, you're right. What I'm really saying here is I typically avoid modern base cards in these areas because there just isn't enough volume or margin. Now, modern paper base is usually not enough unless it's extremely cheap and clearly useful for live selling or curated lots. And the same is true for wrestling as it is Star Wars. A recognizable wrestler on a basic modern paper card may still not be compelling enough as a standalone eBay listing. But that same wrestler on a chrome refractor, maybe a numbered parallel or an autograph, a relic or an older card becomes much more interesting. For Star Wars, vintage gets my attention, but condition decides the lane. And that's an important distinction. A 1977 top Star Wars card with Princess Leia or Darth Vader still has demand, even if it's not near mint. But if the condition is lower, maybe it's not a $5 or more card. Maybe it's a $2.50 sale. Maybe it belongs in a set builder lot. Maybe it belongs in a live sale stack. Maybe it belongs with the other original trilogy cards. So the buying rule is not just buy vintage Star Wars. The buying rule is buy the lane. Clean vintage can be static eBay singles. Lower grade vintage can be live sale or curated lot cards. Major characters get more attention. Scene cards need better condition or better pricing. Rough commons are bulk unless the price is low enough. And stickers, oddball variations, promos, they need separate research. And that same idea applies to professional wrestling as well. Vintage or older wrestling can be strong, but condition and subject matter still matter. Modern wrestling needs shine, scarcity, or some type of hook. Chrome, refractors, parallels, numbered, autos, relics, those major names, legends, debut type cards, anything that gives the buyer a reason to pick that copy instead of the cheapest base card. The phrase I would use is this: age, shine, scarcity, or weirdness. That's what I want in Star Wars and wrestling. Age means vintage. Shine means chrome or refractor. Scarcity means numbered, short print, limited, or exclusive. And weirdness means those oddballs, the promos, food issues, convention items, something you don't see every day. If a card has none of those things, it better be extremely cheap. Because otherwise, it probably becomes the same problem as low-end sports base. Recognizable, but not compelling. The next part of the national plan is everything outside the normal buying boxes. Promos, redemptions, free packs, manufacturer exclusives, vendor relationships, and unique items. These are all part of the opportunity, but they need discipline too. Promos and redemptions can be great. They can create quick turn listings, live show content, social media content. They can be fun for the team itself, and they can help offset some trip costs if the demand is there early. But free is, well, it's not always free. If four people stand in a line for an hour to get something worth a few dollars, that might not be a good use of the time. So one person should monitor that lane. What are the wrapper redemption requirements? What manufacturers are doing redemptions? Are there exclusive packs? Are there time windows? Are there free promos worth chasing? Can one person handle it while others keep sourcing? That is the structure we need. The other big piece is vendor exploration. The National is not just about what we buy that day. It's about finding vendors we want to work with again. Dealers with non-sport inventory. Dealers with fresh dollar boxes. Dealers with bulk they're willing to move. Dealers who don't want to bring inventory home. And supply vendors and software vendors. People like Haystack and stand-up displays. People who might ship after the show. People who might be worth checking with again next year. And that's why booth tracking matters. A good vendor contact can be worth more than a single deal. For example, I still speak to engineers at Haystack, and I still speak to contacts at Card Dealer Pro. These are contacts that I made at the National. And then there are the unique items. And this is the danger category, but also the fun category. Unique items can be great content and great inventory, but they can also be a trap because they're harder to comp, harder to ship, and harder to list. So for unique items, I want to ask, is there clear demand? Is there a clear buyer? Can we ship it safely? Can we list it without hours of research? And is it priced low enough to justify the uncertainty? Or does it create content or live sale interest even if it's not a fast eBay sale? If the answer is yes, then unique items are worth considering. But if the only reason I want it is because it looks cool, then that's a personal purchase, not inventory. And that distinction matters very much. Looking for a card show in the Green Bay area? Well, then check out the GOAT Card Show, Green Bay's officially awesome trading card show, presented by the Dollar Box and JC3 Cards and Collectibles. The GOAT Card Show is built for collectors, families, vendors, and hobby fans, with a strong local card show atmosphere, a wide variety of tables, free admission, free parking, giveaways, and hobby-focused events throughout the year. For upcoming show dates, vendor information, table availability, and event updates, follow the GOAT Card Show online. You can also email thegoatcardshow@gmail.com for info and tables. That's the GOAT Card Show, Green Bay's officially awesome trading card show. So the plan for the National this year comes down to this. We're not going just to walk around. We're going as a team. If we're going as a team, we need the team to create leverage. One person buying, one person comping, one person scouting non-sport, and one person tracking promos and redemptions. Roles can rotate, but the work needs structure. The inventory targets are clear. Scannable cards, true hobby names, vintage, chrome, parallels, and unique non-sport. Clear margin, $5 and up static inventory, live sale and curated lot inventory, national exclusives and promos when the time investment makes sense, and vendor relationships that can matter after the show. The measurable goal is simple. We need a few 5,000 count monster boxes. At least one of them should be clean, static marketplace inventory. The other should be curated lot or live selling inventory. And that gives us a trip to the scoreboard, because the National can overwhelm you. Every table has something interesting. Every box is something that feels like a maybe. And every dealer has something that could be a deal. But interesting is not the same as profitable, and cheap is not the same as useful. The final takeaway is this: don't buy cards, buy lanes. Buy the lane for eBay, the lane for whatnot, a lane for live selling, and a lane for curated lots. Buy a lane for non-sport, a lane for promos, and a lane for future vendor relationships. If the card does not have a lane, it probably stays at the show. That is the plan. The National is the biggest inventory opportunity of the year for us. The goal is to come home with cards that do not just look good in a monster box. They need to become listings, and they need to become live sales. They need to become lots, and they need to become inventory that actually moves. This is how we turn the National from a hobby trip into a business trip. Thanks for joining us again here at My So-Called Card Life. We hope you too keep building your own so-called card life.